man who held my hand while I gave birth to our 2 children, the man who cried with me at my mother's funeral, the man who danced with me at Langston's graduation and again at Zadie's wedding. How could I ever doubt him? The last Tuesday of his life was no different from the thousands before it. It was March, unseasonably warm and sticky in Philadelphia. He walked out the door at 2 o'clock sharp. I fixed his shirt collar, kissed him, and said, "Drive safe." He smiled that familiar smile I'd known for almost 40 years, and answered, "Always do, my love." I went to the Reading Terminal Market to do some shopping. I was standing in the produce aisle, picking out oranges, when my phone rang. It was Langston, our oldest son. His voice sounded wrong, tight, controlled, like he was carrying something too heavy and refusing to let it fall. "Mama, you have to come to the hospital right now." My heart started racing. My hands went ice cold. What happened? Is it the grandkids? It's Pop. He got sick at the office. He collapsed. Please come quick. I abandoned the cart, oranges, groceries, everything, and ran. My purse was slipping off my shoulder, but I barely noticed. My hands shook so badly I could hardly get the key into the ignition. The hospital in University City was 15 minutes from our house in Mount Airy. I made it in 10. Blowing through yellow lights, praying out loud. Langston was waiting in the emergency room hallway. I saw him from a distance and I knew before he even opened his mouth. His face was ashen, his eyes red, his shoulders collapsed inward. When he saw me coming, he dropped his head. He didn't have to say it. "Mama, I'm so sorry. Pop didn't make it." Thaddeus was gone. A massive heart attack. 59 years old. Healthy, active, walked every morning. Didn't smoke. Only drank socially. And just like that, dead. He collapsed at his desk in front of his colleagues. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood there staring at Langston, trying to make the words fit inside my head. My husband, the man I'd slept beside for 38 years. The father of my children, was dead. People thought it was shock. They hugged me in the hallway and said the tears would come later, when it finally sank in. But it wasn't shock, it was something else. A strange pressure lifting from my chest. A door I didn't even know was locked, suddenly swinging open. For the first time in years, I could breathe deep and free. And that terrified me more than his death ever could. What kind of wife feels relief when her husband dies? What kind of woman was I? The funeral was held on a rainy Saturday at Mother Bethel AIM Church. The place was packed. Thaddeus's colleagues, his fraternity brothers from Howard, neighbors, strangers, all talking about what a hard-working, honest, upright man he had been. I listened to every word and felt like they were describing someone I'd never met. Zadie sobbed through the entire service. She had always been Daddy's little girl. Langston held it together until they closed the casket. Then the tears rolled silently down his face. And there I was in black, accepting condolences, thanking people for casseroles and flowers and empty words of comfort, while inside I felt nothing but a cold, hollow space. 2 days after the burial on Monday morning, plain white envelope arrived in the mail. My name was typed in crisp black letters. No return address. I opened it without a second thought. Inside was a single sheet on the letterhead of Union Trust Bank. Dear Mrs. Eulalia Vance, we extend our deepest condolences on the passing of your husband, Mr. Thaddeus Vance. According to our records, you are listed as co-owner of Safety Deposit Box 1847. The annual fee has been paid through December of this year. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to arrange access to the contents. Sincerely, Management Union Trust. Bonk. I read it once, then again, slower. A safety deposit box. Thaddeus had never, not once, in 38 years mentioned a safety deposit box. Not a word, not a hint. I called the bank immediately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. The woman on the line was calm and polite. Yes, the box was registered to Thaddeus and Eulalia Vance. Yes, I was authorized to open it. Yes, Wednesday at 10 a.m. would be fine. Wednesday, 48 hours away. 48 hours that stretched like 48 years. I didn't sleep. I wandered through the house like a ghost, pulling open drawers, flipping through files, searching for anything that might explain what was happening. Everything looked normal to normal. Bills filed in perfect alphabetical order. Folders labeled in Thaddeus's neat handwriting. Electric, water, property tax, insurance. Every receipt in its place. But something felt wrong. Like walking into your house and knowing someone else had been there. Touching your things, even though nothing was obviously out of place. A violation I could feel in my bones, but couldn't yet name. Tuesday night, Langston came over. He looked rectus, sunken, beard rough, tie hanging loose. The death had hit him hard. "Mama," he said, "we need to talk." Nobody ever wants to hear those words. We sat at the kitchen table. He set a thick manila folder down between us, the kind lawyers use, fastened with an elastic band. "I've been going through Pop's office files from the consulting firm," he said. "There's something weird, a lot that doesn't add up." My stomach dropped. He opened the folder and spread out bank statements I had never seen before, numbers that made no sense. He pointed to one line, "Your joint checking account, Mama, the one we all thought was healthy, it's almost empty. There's only $1,200 left." $1,200, I whispered. "That's impossible. Your father deposited his checks. I deposited my pension. There's always been money in that account." "I know," Langston said quietly, "and there's more. The emergency savings account he always talked about. It doesn't exist anymore. It was closed 6 months ago." I felt the floor disappear beneath me. "And the retirement fund," he continued, voice cracking. "The investments he bragged about for years, they're gone, Mama. All of it. Here is the continuation, fully rewritten with the same care, correct grammar, natural rhythm, emotional power, and every single detail preserved exactly as you intended." Langston shook his head slowly, as though the truth itself might shatter me if he spoke too quickly. "I can't find anything, Mama. Nothing." I tore through every file in his office. I called the accountant, the bank manager, even the old brokerage he used years ago. "It's all gone. Like it never existed." He looked at me with eyes full of pain and confusion. "But it has to exist. Pop worked his whole life. We always saved. Always. So where did it go?" "I don't know, baby," I whispered, "but we're going to find out." That night, I didn't sleep at all. I lay on Thaddeus's empty side of the bed, staring at the ceiling I knew by heart every crack. Every shadow danced in the streetlight that slipped through the blinds. My mind kept circling back to one thing. Tuesdays. 38 years of Tuesdays. I'm going to resolve some things at the bank. Sugar. What exactly had he been resolving all that time? Little memories started crawling out of the dark. Things I'd never thought twice about. The way he sometimes came home tense, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. I'd ask, "Everything okay, honey?" And he'd force a tired smile. "Fine, sugar. Just tired." How many Tuesdays had ended like that? Hundreds. And I never once pressed him. Trusting was easier than doubting. Loving him meant believing him. Wednesday morning arrived, cold and gray, the sky heavy with the promise of bad news. I dressed like I was putting on armor. Black slacks, crisp white blouse, navy blazer. I stood in front of the mirror and looked hard at the woman staring back, 60 years old, chestnut brown, dye still fighting the gray, fine lines around my eyes that told the story of a full life. But what kind of life had it really been? Langston offered to come with me to the bank. I told him no. Whatever was waiting in that box, I had to face it alone first. Some truths are too ugly for an audience. Union Trust Bank sat in the heart of Center City's leak, smoked glass and cold steel. Lights so bright, everything looked fake. The branch manager greeted me in the lobby, mid-50s, perfect bun, gray suit, practiced sympathy in her eyes. "Mrs. Vance, my deepest condolences. Your husband was a valued client for decades. A truly admirable man." Admirable. There was that word again. Everyone kept using it. Was I the only one starting to see the cracks? She led me downstairs in a silent elevator. When the doors slid open, we stepped into the vault, a long, dim hallway lined with hundreds of small metal doors, each one hiding somebody's secrets. She stopped at box 1847. She inserted her key, then handed me mine. 2 clicks, and the little door swung open. She pulled out a long metal box, heavier than I expected, and set it in my trembling hands. "There's a private room just through there, Mrs. Vance. Take all the time you need." Then she left me alone with it. The room was stark white. A table, 2 chairs, a buzzing fluorescent light overhead. I set the box down and stared at it for what felt like forever. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. My palms were slick with sweat. I took 3 deep breaths, remembering some long ago yoga class, but the fear stayed, ice cold in my stomach. Finally I opened the lid. Inside were folders. Dozens of them, organized with Thaddeus's usual obsessive precision. Handwritten labels in his neat, slanted script. Everything in its perfect place. The first folder was labeled in thick red ink, "Real investments do not open," as if he knew one day I would. Of course, I opened it. What I saw stole the air from my lungs. Page after page of disasters. Stocks that had crashed. Companies that went bankrupt overnight. Startups that vanished without a trace. Secret brokerage accounts opened only in his name, accounts he had never once mentioned to me. Chase Bank, loss of $85,000. Citibank, loss of $120,000. Some firm I'd never heard of, loss of $210,000. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are money thrown into the fire. Money he'd told me was safe, growing, protected for our retirement, for the grandchildren. The second folder was labeled LOANS, urgent. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the cover. 3 home equity loans, all secured against our house, the house in Mount Airy where we'd raised our babies, where I'd planted roses every spring, where every wall held 40 years of memories. Our paid-off house. $110,120,000. $90,000. Total. $320,000. In debt hanging over the roof that was supposed to be mine, free and clear. He had gambled our home and never told me. I couldn't breathe. The walls started closing in. The third folder finished me. Credit cards, MRS, Eulolia, Vance. My name. My full name. 15 credit cards. All opened in my name alone. My social security number. My date of birth. My signature, except it wasn't my signature. It was close, practiced, but not mine. Forged. Discover, $10,000 limit. $12,000 owed. Capital One, $15,000 limit. $17,000 owed. Amex, $8,000 limit. $9,000 owed. Every single one maxed out. Interest piling up like snowdrifts. Late fees. Collection notices I'd never seen. Total debt. $110,000. All in my name. All destroying my credit while I smiled and cooked dinner and trusted my husband. I sat frozen, staring at the proof that the man who swore to protect me had stolen my identity, my security, my future. How long I stayed like that, I don't know. 10 minutes? An hour? Time stopped. MATTERING. At the very bottom of the box lay one last item. A thick cream envelope. Expensive paper. My name written across the front in Thaddeus's unmistakable handwriting. I picked it up with fingers that no longer felt like my own. Whatever was inside, I already knew it would break whatever pieces of me were still left. Langston read it out loud, his voice cracking at first, then growing harder with every sentence. I sat there watching my children's faces as the man they'd worshipped turned into someone they didn't recognize. When Langston reached the part about the forged credit cards, Zadie let out a sound I'd never heard from her before. Half sob, half scream. She pressed both hands over her mouth and rocked forward. Langston kept reading, all the way to the end. When he finished, the kitchen was dead silent, except for Zadie's muffled crying. I folded my hands on the table and waited. Langston was the first to speak. His voice came out low, dangerous. He stole from you. He stole your name, Mama. He stole our house. He stole everything and then left you holding the bag. Zadie shook her head over and over. Daddy wouldn't. He loved us. This can't. He did, I said quietly. It's all right here. Dates, signatures, account numbers. It's real. Langston slammed his palm on the table so hard the salt shaker jumped. 40 years. 40 years of pretending. Every Tuesday he kissed you goodbye and came here to dig the hole deeper. Zadie looked up at me, eyes swollen and red. Mama, what are we going to do? The house. Foreclosure. Your credit. I reached out and took one of each of their hands. Listen to me. Your father is gone. I loved him for 38 years, and part of me is still in shock that the man I loved could do this, but I am still here. I am still your mother, and I am not going to let his mistakes bury us. Langston's jaw was tight. What does that mean? It means we fight. First, we protect this house. Then we rebuild what we can. Then we make sure no bank, no creditor, no foreclosure mill takes one more thing from this family without a war. I picked up the thick folder the bank manager had given me. I already have copies of everything. I have the name of the best financial fraud attorney in Philadelphia, Dubois. She's expecting my call tomorrow morning. And I'm going to make sure every single person who looked the other way while your father destroyed us answers for it. Zadie wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. Mama, are you angry? I thought about it for a long second. I passed angry somewhere around the third forged credit card. I said, now I'm something else. Focused, clear, done being the quiet little wife who let somebody else handle things. Langston stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Good, he said finally, because I'm with you, whatever you need, lawyers, accountants, private investigators, I'm in. Zadie nodded, still crying but straighter now. Me too, whatever it takes. I squeezed their hands. Then here's the first thing. From this moment on, we tell the truth in this house. No more secrets. No more pretending everything's fine when it isn't. We face it together. I looked around the kitchenette, the calendar still turned to March. At Thaddeus's coffee mug, still in the drying rack. At the family photos, smiling down from the wall. Your father wasn't a monster, I said softly. He was a man who made terrible choices trying to fix terrible choices. But the love in those pictures, that was real. We don't have to throw that away. We just have to stop paying for his mistakes. Langston stood up, came around the table, and wrapped his arms around me. Zadie joined him. We stood there in the middle of the kitchen, the three of us holding on tight, while the rain that had threatened all day finally started to fall against the windows. It sounded like the old life washing away, and somewhere inside me, something new, hard, bright, and unbreakable was already taking root. I whispered into my children's shoulders, so only they could hear. He thought he was protecting me by hiding the truth. Watch me protect all of us by facing it. And for the first time in 38 years, I knew exactly what I had to do next. She said, you either choose to invest with your dad or stay married to me, but you can't have both. Langston looked down at the table, shame and relief fighting on his face. I chose Karen, he whispered. I chose my wife. I was so angry at her for months. I barely spoke to Pop about it afterward because I was embarrassed. But Mama, she saved us. That $50,000 is still in my 401k. It's the only money this family has left that he never touched. I sat back in the chair, feeling the air leave my lungs in one long, slow breath. Your wife is a lot smarter than both of us, I said. Remind me to buy that woman the biggest bouquet of flowers Philadelphia has ever seen. Langston gave a broken little laugh that turned into a sob. He dropped his head into his hands, and for the first time since the funeral, my big, strong boy cried like he was 10 years old again. I reached over and rubbed his back the way I did when he had nightmares as a child. It's all right, baby. We're still here, we still have each other, and now we have the truth. That's going to have to be enough to start with. The weeks that followed were brutal, but they were also clarifying, like a house being stripped down to the studs so you can see exactly what's rotten and what can still be saved. Attorney Dubois moved fast. Every credit card company received a thick packet, police report, forgery, affidavit, the handwriting expert's report, Thaddeus's death certificate, and the letter he left confessing everything. One by one, the accounts began to close. Balances dropped to zero. Fraud, deceased spouse stamped across every file. My credit score, which had fallen into the low 500s, started climbing again, 10 points, 30 points, 50 points at a time. The home equity loans were harder. The banks didn't want to let go of the collateral. Dubois filed emergency motions, arguing spousal fraud and undue influence. She found case law. Marriages where one partner had secretly encumbered the marital home and courts had voided the liens entirely. In June, a judge granted a temporary stay on the foreclosure. The house was safe for now. Zadie still wasn't speaking to me. She had moved in with her in-laws temporarily. Every time I called, it went to voicemail. Langston said she was angry at me, at Thaddeus, at the whole world, and that anger had nowhere to land yet. I let her be. Some truths you can't force down someone's throat. They have to swallow them when they're ready, or they choke. One humid afternoon in July, I was in the garden pulling weeds, something I hadn't done since Thaddeus died, when the front gate creaked. Zadie stood on the walkway in a yellow sundress, eyes puffy, arms wrapped around herself like she was holding herself together. I dropped the trowel and walked toward her. Not sure if she would bolt, she didn't. When I reached her, she fell into my arms and started sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Mama, I'm sorry, she kept saying, over and over. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe Daddy would. I just wanted him to still be my hero. I held her tight, stroking her hair the way I did when she was small and the world felt too big. I know, baby, I whispered. I wanted that too. But heroes are still human. And sometimes humans break in ways we never expect. We stood there a long time, the sun beating down on us, until her crying slowed. Then she pulled back, wiped her face, and looked me dead in the eye. I'm in, she said, voice raw but steady. Whatever you need, I'll testify. I'll dig through files. I'll sit in every courtroom. I'm not letting him take this house, or your name, or one more day of peace from you. I smiled my first real smile in months. That's my girl. That same week, the last credit card reported the balance as zero. My credit score hit 712. In August. 2 of the 3 home equity loans were discharged entirely by the lenders to much bad press, too much evidence of fraud. The third was reduced to $40,000 and converted to an unsecured personal note. The house was ours again, free and clear except for that one remaining chain. Attorney Dubois called it a miracle. I called it justice, finally waking up. One evening in early September, the 3 of us, Langston, Zadie, and I, sat on the back porch drinking iced tea and watching the sun set over the roses I had refused to let die. Langston raised his glass. "To Mama," he said. "The strongest woman we know." Zadie clinked her glass against mine. "And to the truth, ugly as it is, it set us free." I looked at both of them, my beautiful, bruised, resilient children, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peaceful ignorance I'd lived in for 38 years. Real peace. Hard-earned, clear-eyed, unbreakable. I lifted my glass. To new beginnings. I said, and for the first time in a very long time, I believed them possible, so I told Pop, no. Langston looked at me with astonished eyes, full of guilt. I think he was already drowning back then. I think the construction company had already gone under. I think he was desperate, trying to use my money to cover his own mistakes. If I had said yes, we would have lost everything. Too, Karen saved me, and I almost didn't forgive her for it. I held his hand across the table. But you didn't invest. Thank God you didn't invest. And you know what that tells me? That your father was drowning, and people who are drowning grab onto anything anyone even if they sink everyone together. Do you think he would have continued asking other people for money? His friends? His relatives? I think he was doing anything to stay afloat. And when we're in that state, we lose the notion of right and wrong. Or we choose to ignore it. 3 months after Thaddeus's death, we had our first victory. 2 credit card issuers agreed that the signatures were forged. They removed the debts from my credit report. $23,000 of debt erased. It wasn't everything, not even close, but it was proof that the truth could win. However slowly, Zadie still wouldn't talk to me. I tried calling her, sending messages, nothing. She had blocked me on everything. Langston said she was processing, that I had to respect it, but it hurt. It hurt losing my husband and my daughter in the same year. The lawsuit regarding the house loans was more complicated. The bank's lawyer argued that as Thaddeus's wife, I had benefited from the loan money. Even if I hadn't signed, even if I didn't know, Attorney Dubois refuted forcefully. She can prove she never saw those funds. They were deposited into accounts exclusively in his name, spent on investments that failed before she knew they existed. She was a victim, not an accomplice. We'll have to go to court, she told me in one of our meetings. A judge will have to decide if you are responsible for debts incurred through fraud, even being married to the fraudster. Are we going to win? She hesitated, and I appreciated the honesty. I think so. We have a strong case, but I can't guarantee it. It's complex legal ground. There have been rulings for both sides. The hearing was scheduled for September, 6 months after Thaddeus's death. 6 months that felt like 6 years in the weeks leading up to the hearing. I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked for a job. At 60 years old, I wasn't exactly in demand in the job market. I had spent most of my adult life as a homemaker. I went back to working as an English teacher at language schools after the boys grew up. I retired 2 years ago, dreaming of traveling, seeing the world, enjoying the grandkids, enjoying the life I had built. Instead, I was applying for openings at clothing stores, restaurants, supermarket, anywhere that would hire someone needing to start from scratch at 60. A language institute called me for an interview, the Wheatley Language Institute in Germantown. The owner was a woman in her 70s, completely white hair she didn't try to hide. Bright red glasses, a kind smile that reached her eyes. "So, Eulalia," she said, looking at my sparse resume. English teacher for 15 years, retired 2 years ago. Married for almost 40 years. Why do you want to go back to work now? I could have lied, invented something about boredom, about wanting to stay active, about not standing being at home. Polite lies people say in interviews. But I was tired of lies, even polite ones. My husband died 4 months ago. After he died, I discovered he stole my identity, forged my signature, opened credit cards in my name, destroyed our finances. I need a job because I am fighting not to lose my house. Miss Etta Mathat was her name. Put the resume on the table slowly. She looked at me for a long time, a look that wasn't pity. It was recognition from someone who had seen this kind of thing before. Then she smiled. Not a polite smile, a real smile. When can you start? I started working the following week, 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. The pay wasn't high, $1,800 a month, but it was something more important. It gave me a place to go, a purpose beyond just surviving every day. I liked teaching. I always liked it. I liked seeing the moment something clicked in a student's head. When they finally understood the difference between present and simple past, when they managed to form a complete sentence, when they started thinking in English, not translating word for word. Miss Etta May and I became friends quickly. She had a story too. Everyone does. One afternoon while we were organizing books in the teacher's lounge, she told me, I was married for 12 years, she said. Ended the marriage 30 years ago. Best decision of my life. Why? He wasn't dishonest with money, at least not that I know of. But he was dishonest with everything else. Other women, other lives, other versions of himself. Every day he was a different person, depending on who was watching. She straightened a stack of grammar books. When I finally left, you know what folks told me? That I was exaggerating, that all marriages have problems, that I should try harder, go to marriage counseling, be more understanding, more patient, more tolerant. She looked at me. But you know what I learned? The people telling you to try harder, usually the ones who never had to try for real, who never had to choose between keeping the lie alive or saving their own life. Her words stayed with me because that was exactly what I was doing, saving my own life. Even if it cost Thaddeus's memory, even if it cost my relationship with Zadie, even if it cost everything. The court hearing was on a Thursday in September. Cold, rain threatening all day but not really falling. Langston went with me. We dressed, formally him in a suit, me in a navy blue ensemble like we were going to a wedding, not a war. Zadie didn't respond to my invitation. Not by text, not by email. Total silence. The night before, she sent a short message through Langston. I can't watch you do this to Daddy's name. I'm sorry, I replied through Langston. I understand, too. I love you anyway. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Not like in the movies. It didn't have that grandeur. It was a common room, wooden benches, fluorescent lights, the Pennsylvania state flag in a corner, noisy air conditioning. The judge was a man of about 60, gray hair, thick-rimmed glasses, serious expression but not hostile. Judge Percival W. Sterling. Attorney Dubois had researched him. Said he was fair, rigorous with evidence, but fair. The bank's lawyer spoke. First, a young man in his 30s, expensive suit. The confidence of someone who hasn't lost anything important in life yet. He argued that I was Thaddeus's wife, that I lived in the house financed by the loans, that I benefited from the marriage, that therefore I was responsible for the debts even without having signed, even without knowing. Your Honor, he said with a firm voice, the financial institution acted in good faith. We granted the loans following all protocols, verified documentation, recorded the liens. The fact that the spouse claims lack of knowledge does not void the contract, especially considering she indirectly benefited from the resources. Attorney Dubois stood up when it was her turn. She was smaller than the bank lawyer, but when she spoke, she filled the room. Your Honor. With all due respect, my client benefited from nothing. The loan amounts were deposited into accounts exclusively in the deceased husband's name, accounts she was unaware of. They were spent on investments that failed before she ever authorized them, ever knew of them, ever participated in them. She showed the forged signatures. Here is the affidavit from the forensic handwriting expert retired with 30 years of service, stating categorically, these are not Eulalia Vance's signatures, they are forgeries. Good forgeries, but forgeries. My client was a victim of a crime, identity theft committed by her own husband. She showed Thaddeus's letter, and here is the confession from the fraudster himself, admitting everything, every debt, every forgery, every lie. This is not spousal negligence, Your Honor. It is a crime. The judge called for a recess. We went out into the hallway. Langston paced back and forth. Attorney Dubois checked messages on her phone. I sat on a hard wooden bench, completely still, hands folded in my lap. You were great in there, Mama, Langston said. I hadn't even had my turn to speak yet, but he was nervous, needed to say something. I nodded, but I wasn't thinking about the trial. I was thinking about Zadie, about the daughter who couldn't accept what her father had done, who needed the lie, who chose the illusion over the truth, and wondering if one day she could forgive me for saying the truth out loud, After an hour and 15 minutes, they called us back. Attorney Dubois called me to testify. I sat in the witness chair. I put my left hand on the Bible. I swore to tell the truth, only the truth. Mrs. Vance, Attorney Dubois began, when did you first know about these loans? When I opened the safety deposit box, my husband kept secret for days after he died. After 38 years of marriage, did your husband ever mention taking out loans using your house as collateral? Never. Did you receive any money from these loans? No, not a dime. It all went to accounts I didn't even know existed. She cried quietly while she spoke, twisting a tissue into knots. He told everyone I was bad with money, she said, that I spent too much on clothes, on the kids, but I haven't bought myself anything new in 3 years. He opened cards in my name, took loans against the house. I only found out last month when the bank called about foreclosure. He's sitting at home pretending everything is fine, and I'm the one with ruined credit. I listened the way Miss Edame had once listened to me. No judgment, no hurry, just space. When she finished, I slid a fresh tissue across the table and said, you are not crazy, you are not stupid, and you are not alone. I've been exactly where you are. Her eyes filled again, but this time there was something else in them, relief. Maybe the first flicker of fight. I gave her Attorney Dubois's card. I gave her the phone number for the domestic financial abuse hotline I now kept in my purse. I told her about the support group that met Thursday nights at the YWCA, on Girard Avenue. She hugged me hard before she left, like I had thrown her a rope. After that, it happened again, and again. Women started finding their way to the language school the way hurt people sometimes do, quietly, shamefully, hoping no one notices the bruises you can't see. A nurse whose husband had drained their joint account for online gambling. A teacher who discovered retirement money gone, replaced by payday loans in her name. A young mother of 3 who came in asking for beginner English books and left carrying resources on how to freeze her credit. I never advertised it. I never put up a sign, but word travels in certain circles. The way it always has among women who've learned to speak in code. Miss Edame noticed. One afternoon she found me in the back room, printing credit report instructions for yet another visitor. You're building something here, Eulalia, she said, adjusting her red glasses. Not just a job, a lifeline. I laughed, embarrassed. I'm just doing what you did for me. No, sugar, she said. I gave you a paycheck. You're giving them hope? That's bigger. By the end of that year, my credit score was back above 740. The house was mine. Free and clear. Zadie's forged cards were closed. Her credit repaired. Langston and Karen paid cash for the bigger house they'd been dreaming of. No mortgage needed. And every Tuesday at 2 p.m., the exact time Thaddeus used to leave for the bank, I opened the school's community room for a free workshop. I called Money and Marriage, knowing what you're signing and what you're not. We served coffee and honesty in equal measure. Women came. Some cried. Some got angry. All of them left taller than when they walked in. One evening, after the last student had gone, I locked the doors and stood in the quiet hallway. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, Mount Airy was settling into winterbear trees. Porch lights glowing. The faint smell of wood smoke in the air. I thought about Thaddeus. I no longer hated him. Hate takes too much energy. And I needed every ounce for living. But I understood him now. A man who started with one bad decision and spent the rest of his life running from it, dragging the people he loved most down with him. I forgave him for being weak. I did not forgive him for making me pay the price of his weakness, and that clean, final was what finally set me free. I turned off the lights, pulled on my coat, and stepped out into the cold. For the first time in 38 years, Tuesday belonged to me. I feel crazy, she said, like I'm inventing things, seeing problems where there aren't any. You are not crazy, I told her gently. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Trust your gut. When she left, she hugged me tight. Thank you for believing me. My husband says I'm paranoid. My mama says I'm exaggerating, but you believed me. After she was gone, Miss Etta May looked at me. You're good at this. At what? At listening for real. At believing without judging. At seeing the person behind the problem. I thought about Zadie's initial reaction, about the friends who had drifted away when I started talking about Thaddeus, uncomfortable with the complexity, with the ugly truth. I know what it's like not to be believed, I said simply. In the following months, more women appeared. I don't know how the word spread, word of mouth, maybe social media, church groups, but they came. Some to buy books, others just to talk, all carrying stories similar to mine. Miss Etta May suggested creating something more formal. How about a monthly support group here at the school, in the back room? Only women who have gone through financial abuse. You think folks would come? I think you'd be surprised. We put a small ad in the local paper, the Philadelphia Tribune, and posted on the school's social media. Support group for women victims of financial abuse. First Tuesday of every month, 7 p.m. free. At the first meeting, 12 women showed up. 12, I was expecting 3, at most. We arranged chairs in a circle in the back room. Made coffee, put cookies on a tray. I started by telling my whole story. The Tuesdays, the safety deposit box, the forgeries, the legal battle, the daughter who didn't believe, the slow and painful reconstruction. When I finished, the silence was absolute. Then, one by one, they started to speak. One told how her husband had sold her car without her knowing. Another how her ex-husband had emptied the joint account and fled. Another how her father had stolen the inheritance left by her mother. Different stories, but all with the same pattern: control, isolation, manipulation, lies. How did you manage to stay strong? One of them asked at the end. I didn't. I answered honestly. I cried. I screamed. I got mad. I got terrified. I spent nights without sleep, whole days without eating, but I kept going because the alternative was to give up, and I had already spent too many years letting others decide for me. The group grew quickly. Second meeting, 17 women. Third, 22. Fourth, we had to rent a larger room at a community center in Germantown because they didn't fit in the school anymore. We shared resources, names of lawyers who charged a fair price, tips for rebuilding credit, strategies for dealing with family who didn't understand, useful websites, financial tracking apps, knowledge that could have saved me years of suffering. One night, after a particularly intense meeting, Miss Etta May and I were left alone, organizing the chairs. You know what you're doing here, right? She said. You aren't just running a support group, you're building a legacy. That man tried to destroy you, leave you with nothing. No money, no credit, no future, but you took what hurt you, and you are using it to help other women. You are transforming poison into medicine, pain into purpose. She fixed the last chair. This isn't just survival, Eulolia. It's transformation. It's a silent revolution. I thought about that word. Transformation. I had spent so much energy trying to go back to being who I was before, trying to recover the life Thaddeus had stolen from me. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the goal was to become someone new, someone forged in the fire of betrayal, of loss, of the hard work of rebuilding. 1 year after Thaddeus's death, we held the group's anniversary meeting. 28 women in a circle. Some I knew intimately, others were relatively new, all connected by the invisible thread of having trusted someone who broke that trust. When my husband died, I thought my life had ended. In a way, it did. The life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, the future I planned with such care, everything died with him. I looked around the circle, attentive faces, some crying silently, others nodding in recognition, but something else was born. Not immediately, not easily, but gradually. A new version of me. Stronger, wiser, more cautious, but also more compassionate, because now I know what it is to be deceived by someone you love. I know what it is to discover that your whole life was based on lies. I continued. What Thaddeus did was wrong, legally, morally, ethically wrong. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I'm not going to soften it. I'm not going to excuse it. But what I did after was my choice. I could have stayed trapped in the rage, in the victimization, in the hate. Instead, I chose to move forward, rebuild, and help other women do the same. After the meeting, a young woman approached, couldn't be more than eyes red from crying. My husband handles all our money, she said. Says I'm not good with numbers, that I don't understand, that I should let him handle it, but something feels wrong. I can't explain it, I just know it's wrong. I held her hands. Trust that feeling. Ask questions. Ask to see the bills, the statements, the investments. Don't let anyone, not even someone you love deeply, keep you in the dark about your own financial life. And if I'm wrong, if I'm being paranoid, he's going to get furious. Then you'll look foolish for 5 minutes. You apologize and move on, secure that you were protecting yourself. But if you're right and you don't investigate, I squeezed her hands. You can lose everything. Everything. She came back the next month with documents. Her husband was siphoning money from the joint account, investing in cryptocurrency. Without telling her, he had lost $87,000. She had filed for divorce. I'm terrified. She told me, handshaking, I don't know how I'm going to survive, but I also feel free for the first time in years. I knew exactly what she meant. Months passed. Zadie's credit was regularized, just like mine. Langston invested his savings in a 529 plan for his kids' college, locked, protected, where no one else could touch it. And I continued working at the school 3 days a week, coordinating the support group that had grown so much it became a small nonprofit. Moving forward, day after day, step by step, on what would have been my 39th wedding anniversary, I went to the bank, not Union Trust, where the safety deposit box was, a different bank on the other side of town, a credit union where Thaddeus never entered, where no one knew my story. I opened a new account only in my name, and I deposited my paycheck from the school, $1,800 modest, but mine earned with my work, my sweat, my rebuilding. The teller smiled. Anything else I can help you with today, ma'am? Actually, yes, I would like to change the name on the account. She took the pen. How would you like it to read? Eulalia Chestnut, my maiden name. I wanted to go back to being who I was before the marriage, before Thaddeus. Before the 38 years of trust turned to ash. She typed into the system. Done, Miss Chestnut. Your account is updated. Miss Chestnut, no longer Mrs. Vance. No longer Thaddeus's wife. Just Eulalia. Just me. I walked out of that bank with my head held high. The sun was shining, a beautiful spring day, fresh air, blue sky, and for the first time in over a year, I felt like I knew exactly who I was. If you are reading this, if anything in this story seems familiar, the locked doors, the secrets, the nagging feeling that something is wrong but you can't identify what, trust yourself. Ask questions. Insist on answers. Look at the documents, the bills, the statements. Don't let anyone tell you that love means blind trust, because it doesn't. Never did. True love means partnership, transparency, mutual respect, shared decisions, not secrets, not isolation, not control disguised as care. And if you discover you were betrayed, if you open that safety deposit box and your world crumbles completely, remember, you are stronger than you imagine. The person who tried to snuff you out didn't succeed. You are still here, breathing, fighting, surviving, and that means you can rebuild. It's going to hurt. It's going to be hard. There will be days when you want to give up, but you won't, because you are a survivor, a warrior, stronger than any person who tried to destroy you. I rebuilt my life from the rubble, and you can too. Believe in me, believe in you, and never, never let anyone keep you in the dark about your own life. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe.